Hey there, mamas. Welcome back to another Knit and Tell Friday episode right here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. I am Nadine, and today I'm coming at you with another fun tip. This is actually something that every knitter needs from the very beginning, but there are very many different ways to do this. So I'm sharing with you the various ways to do it and also my favorite one that I just figured out very recently. So let's dive in. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. Hey, welcome back, Mama. So before we're diving into what today's helpful tip is, I just want to let you know that next week I am announcing something super fun for you to do coming very soon. I would highly recommend subscribing to this podcast because this will be the first place where you're going to hear about what it is. And I'm just excited about it. So go hit the subscribe button really quick. You can pause it or you can do it once you're done with this episode if you haven't already subscribed. But that way you will get notified or you can see it in your podcast little app that you're using obviously when there is a new episode. The next episode will be airing next Tuesday. So let's talk about a frustration saving tip today. Once again, this is something that you really do need, even when you're brand new at knitting. And there are many different ways to do this. And I'm talking about tracking what you're knitting. So tracking your rows mainly, because I think that's really the only thing that you have to track, especially in the beginning. If you're knitting something super complex, you have to track maybe different colors that you're working or different stitches. So there's stitch markers for that, but let's not go there quite yet. We're going to go there at some point. For now, what I need you to understand is that you need to track your rows as you knit, because if you don't, you're just going to get super confused in your project. Because and the way that most patterns are laid out is either telling you, once you're in the pattern, like once you have it set up and you're cast on and you're starting to really knit, you are going to either have to knit a certain amount of rows before something else happens. Let's say before you have to cast off, before you have to switch to a different color, or before you have to increase or decrease possibly. And another way of doing that in a pattern is to say knit until your piece measures and then a certain amount of either inches or centimeters. So with this said, it is super helpful to have something where you track how many rows you have knitted and which row you are on. So quick insert here from my personal experience. I'm not the best at tracking what I'm doing when I'm knitting. That's not to say that I'm not trying. I try, and I have tried many different ways to do this, but there are moments when I'm either so into it and I just keep knitting and I forget, or I'm watching something or I'm listening to something as I'm knitting and I literally just it just falls out of my head and I forget to make my little tally mark or whichever way I'm tracking. So that is definitely something that I struggle with. And to be very honest with you, other than telling you that you need to focus on what you're doing, I have no way to really make that any better, except the little tool that I just recently started using. But let me walk you through a couple of ways to do this, because maybe you're not as scatterbrained as I am. And for you, it's just relatively easy to, have your pattern printed out and just make a tally mark. So that's actually a perfect segue into number 1, the first way to keep track of your pattern and keep track of where you are in your pattern. So what I really like is that or really most patterns are written slightly different depending on the designer, but overall, they have like the same kind of structure. And a lot of them will give you like a row by row instruction. But if there is a part in your knitting, and you will have this often in beginner patterns because they're intentionally made very simple, is that things don't really change from row to row. So it'll literally just say, okay, from row 1 to, 35, knit in stockinette stitch, which is one side knit stitch and the back side the purl stitch. But a very easy way to keep track of your pattern and row counting would be simply to print the pattern and then use tally lines and just have a pen with you. Either put it on a clipboard. That's what helped me a lot, because I just don't like the flimsy paper. Just if I'm sitting on the couch, it can be kind of annoying unless you have a side table that you can put it on. But just, for portability, I guess it's nice and easy to put it on a clipboard and just have it with you wherever you take your pattern. Sorry, where you take your project, not your pattern. And then just tally next to the rows that you're on and just make sure you keep track that way. So super simple way. Now, of course, you can take this digitally too, which is what I did for quite a while. And I actually really liked it. I would just take my digital patterns, and I didn't print them out, but just have them on like an annotation app on my iPad or my iPhone, and then just draw on the screen. And you can just make the tally lines that way. You can also use a row counter from the craft store, which I have to give a disclaimer here. I have never used one of them. Not way back when I first started, and not now. So for me, it was always easier to just use the tally lines. But they have these things that you can I think you can put them on your wrist, or you can just lay them next to you and you just click every time you're finished a row and it just continues counting. They make apps like that too, it's a similar way, right? So that's basically the next thing that I'm suggesting. Number 4, you can use an app to track your rows. Again, it works similar to the manual one that you can buy at the store. There are a few apps. I only tried one before, which I honestly don't even remember the name because I only used it very briefly, and it was kind of having some hiccups. So it wasn't great, because even though I knew I tracked, it didn't track. So that wasn't helpful. So I wouldn't recommend that anyway. But the one that I do recommend is called Knit and Note. Putting the link in the show notes, of course, for you for easy access. I love that app. It's free. And you can also, and this is really cool, like it's not just a row counter, but you can import all of your digital patterns into there, and then you can carry them with you wherever you go, which is what I'm currently using, and I'm absolutely loving it. And it has a built-in tracker. So for each project that you're currently on, which by the way, you can track multiple ones if you are like me and you're knitting multiple ones. At the same time, you can switch back and forth between the projects that you're working on, and you can have each of the patterns uploaded in there like a file. And then you can access it, and on there you can just add a row counter. You can add multiple row counters, which is also very helpful if you have a front piece and a back piece and a sleeve and another sleeve. So you can add one for each. And from there, you just have to have your phone open and have it next to you. And then you can just click the button, a plus, every time you add another row. And number 5 is my current favorite way. Like I said, I use the Knit and Note app for having my patterns on me with my phone, like at any time, which I find so very amazing. Instead of having to print the pattern and, figure out how to carry it with me, this makes it a lot easier. So I definitely recommend looking into that if you want to. But this little tool that I just got a few weeks ago is 100% becoming my favorite knitting tool ever. And it is a little stitch marker / row counter. So I'm going to show it in our Facebook community. Of course, I'm going to show you how it works too. It's from a place called Twice Sheared Sheep, which I find so adorable. And I'm going to also see if I can get you guys a code to purchase one where you can have a little discount. Still working on that though, but I didn't want to keep this information from you because I find this such a valuable tool, and I would have totally bought one a long time ago had I known about this. It's brilliant. So it's a little chain made from little loops, metal loops, and it's numbered from 1 to 9, and then there's a 0 as well. And there's a certain way of using it, but essentially what you do is you put the loop over your needle as if you like you would a stitch marker. And then as you knit, every time you get back to the part where your little row counter is hanging off of your needle, every time you pass that point, you're going to put it onto the next number. So you go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and therefore count your rows. And then my first question was, and I'm sure yours is the same, is like, okay, what if I get to 10? How do I go from 10 to 11 or 21, 31, and so on? Well, it comes with this little tiny marker that you put on the 0 when you start at 0, and then you count through from 1 to 9. And then you take that little piece and you put it on the 1 as you get to 10. And then you continue 1, 2, 3, then becomes 11, 12, and 13. It is fantastic. I have not forgotten to count a single row lately because it's almost impossible. Because as soon as you get to your stitch marker / row counter little chain thingy, you are reminded to slip it over from the left needle to the right needle, and you have to remember to put it onto the next number, and therefore you continue to count. And you also can the one tricky part about it, I guess, that I've encountered is the fact that I tend to forget where I need to make another switch. In other words, when my pattern says, my current pattern, which I'm about to talk about, the Kyla sweater, still the Kyla sweater, yes guys, from last Friday, I have made progress, but I'm still in it and I want to finish it. So I'm currently not knitting any multiple projects. I'm just on this one. But as I told you before, it has stripes and it also alternates between stockinette and garter stitch. And therefore, it has different sections. So it'll say something like from row 12 to row 26, knit in color A in garter stitch. So you now have to remember, okay, on row 26, I'm going to be finished and I have to switch. So I do have to refer back to my pattern, of course. But within that section, I will not lose track. So I will know, okay, I'm on row 22 right now. And if I refer to my pattern, I can tell I'm still in the section of color A with the garter stitch. So it's very helpful. And what I also love about it, and this is something for a scatterbrain, like it's like dreamy, sometimes I literally just like have to drop my knitting because it's like, okay, mommy, I need this and I need that. And I'm like, okay, great. So I just pull my needles out really quickly so that no stitches fall off, and I am mid-row and I just drop it. With this thing, I pick it up and I know exactly where I am because of that little stitch marker row. So it's absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. And yeah, that's, I always tell you that you can knit in the nooks and crannies of your day. You can knit 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, take it with you, knit in the car, knit at your kids' games, wherever you choose to end up knitting. There is going to be a time when you're just going to throw it into your bag and you're like, oh crap, where was I? So this is helpful. Just using a row counter period, whichever one you pick, whichever way works best for you. If you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to get into any apps, don't worry about it. Just print out your pattern, have a pen with you, and start making your little tally lines. It's helpful. What I also like is that you can just kind of go by section. So what I would do if I was tallying it, and what I used to do is, like I just said, the example, row 12 to 26, garter stitch, color A, you make your own little tally box just for that. And you count how many rows actually is that. What is that, 14? Actually, no, that is like so wrong. Oh gosh. Math, right? I'm doing math live. This is bad. 8, 16. Okay, 14. It is 14. Okay. And it's Friday, guys. It's Friday. Anyway, so you would make a little box and say 14 rows, garter stitch color A, and then you would start your tally so that you know exactly when you're finished and you can go to your next little tally box, right? So there's definite ways to do it. And I hope it's helpful to see how many different ways you have, to track your rows. So it's not a one size fits all, but I'm going to make sure to put the link to the little tracker that I just recently found into the show notes as well, so you can check it out. And like I just said, still on the Kayla sweater. I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail other than I'm on the sleeves now, which is so fun. Some people are like, oh, I'm in Sleeve Island, and it sounds like, oh, it's so boring. But honestly, I love it because it changes it up from the body. So it's a little bit of a different way of knitting. They're shorter, so it goes faster. And I'm excited to almost be done so that I can wear the thing. So I'm not bored in Sleeve Island at all. I love it. But yes, I'm going to keep you up on that one. If you don't remember, it's a beautiful striped cotton sweater that is a little bit cropped and slightly oversized. So I'm excited to show it off in the Facebook group. You're definitely going to see in there. If you're in there, you have been seeing me posting updates on where I'm at. And like I said, I will also put the pictures of that little row tracker in there so that you can see what it looks like. I might even do a quick video next week where I'm showing how it works, because it's a bit hard to imagine. Even when you see the thing, it's like, wait, how does that work again? So just bear with me and hop on over into our group. You can find it at thenittingmamas.com/group, and I will get you in there, and then you can just kind of join the conversation in there. It's going to be so fun. Plus, next week on the 16th, we're going to have our next Knit and Chill circle where you can just come hang out with us, grab a tea, grab your project, and we'll be knitting together. All right, guys, that is it for today's episode. I'm always trying to keep these short and sweet for you. And one last thing before I wrap up, I am super excited to announce that I've got another designer spotlight episode coming your way soon. I am not 100% sure when it's going to air, but that's kind of like the fun in it, because it will be a surprise for you and me. But I will be chatting with Angie from Whistle and Wool, which is one of my favorite designers. She just came out with a crochet book, and we're going to chat about her book a little bit, but also about how she got started and what her inspiration is behind designing crochet and knitting patterns alike. And also what I find really exciting about it is that her patterns are mostly made for beginner knitters and with a lot of bulky yarn, which is always what I recommend for beginners because they knit up so quickly. And her stuff is just the cutest. So if you want to go and check her out, you can do that. I'm going to put the link to her Instagram and for her blog into the show notes, so you can already have a look and get excited to hear my chat with Angie. So don't forget to grab your knit or row counter. I would love to hear which one is your favorite. Let's keep the conversation going over in our Facebook group. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did like this tip, if you feel like there's other mamas who can benefit from it, feel free to share this episode with your friends. You can also go ahead and share it in a story on Instagram and tag me at thenittingmamas_. So until next time, mamas, let's keep the needles moving. Let's keep making time for ourselves in our busy days and try to enjoy the time that you have. If you hear my kids and my dog in the background, they're screaming outside my door. So it's real life over here too. And yeah, I am definitely going to do some knitting later today in order to keep these nerves calm. All right, you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to thenittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.